There's a quiet kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises, doesn't shout, doesn't slam doors. It simply settles into your spirit, heavy, unwelcome, cold. It's the pain of being unappreciated, unseen, or taken for granted. Many people ignore this wound because it doesn't bleed on the outside, but it damages you deeply on the inside. And today, I want you to stay with me until the last word of this message, because what you're about to hear may save your self-worth, your peace, and your future. By the end of this speech, you will understand why walking away softly is one of the strongest acts of self-respect you can ever choose. Disrespect begins quietly and grows when tolerated. It rarely storms into your life with loud insults or obvious cruelty. Instead, it arrives in shadows, in whispers, in small behaviors that almost look harmless at first glance. It comes dressed as jokes, as forgetfulness, as misunderstandings, as you're too sensitive, as I didn't mean it like that. And because the first signs don't feel threatening, you tell yourself to let them pass. You choose peace over confrontation, harmony over conflict. You swallow the discomfort, hoping that the next moment will feel better. But here is the quiet danger. Every time you ignore a small act of disrespect, you create space for a larger one to grow. In the beginning, disrespect feels like a tiny imbalance. Someone cuts you off mid-sentence and you smile awkwardly. Someone dismisses your feelings and you tell yourself you're overthinking. Someone uses a tone that pricks your heart, and you shake it off, convincing yourself they didn't mean harm. But disrespect is a seed, and the moment you accept it, the soil begins to nurture it. It starts to take root, silently and steadily, feeding on your silence, your patience, and your desire to avoid conflict. The first act of disrespect someone dares to give you is not the problem. The problem begins when you allow it, not because you're weak, but because you hope the person will realize on their own. You hope they'll treat you better next time. You hope they'll see your kindness and respond with the same gentleness. But disrespect doesn't work that way. It thrives in places where boundaries are soft, where the desire to keep the peace overwhelms the need to protect oneself. It becomes bold when unchallenged. It becomes habitual when unaddressed. People learn how to treat you by observing what you allow. If they raise their voice once and you stay silent, they may raise it louder the next time. If they belittle your ideas today and you brush it aside, they may dismiss your dreams tomorrow. If they ignore your feelings now, they may stop considering your heart entirely. Disrespect grows like a vine, slowly, quietly, until one day you look around and realize it has wrapped itself around your peace, your confidence, your identity. It often begins with the smallest things. The sarcastic comment they repeat even after you say it hurts. The way they speak over you in conversations. The subtle eye roll when you express something meaningful. The way they forget commitments that matter to you. The way they invalidate your experiences. These moments seem harmless in isolation, but together they form a pattern that chips away at your sense of worth. Disrespect also grows in the shadows of excuses. You tell yourself they're stressed. You tell yourself they didn't sleep well. You tell yourself this is temporary. You tell yourself everyone makes mistakes. You tell yourself you're being dramatic. But these excuses become the protective cover under which disrespect hides and multiplies. And slowly, you begin to adjust your behavior around their disrespect. You speak less to avoid their reactions. You share less to avoid judgment. You shrink a little bit each day just to keep the peace. Yet the peace you're trying to protect is not peace at all. It's silence created by fear of confrontation. The saddest part is that many people don't notice the growth of disrespect until it's too heavy to carry. They wake up one day feeling small, drained, unseen, and confused how things reach this point. But it never happens overnight. It is the accumulation of unspoken hurts, unacknowledged moments, and swallowed truths. It is the quiet erosion of your emotional boundaries. It is the slow diminishing of your voice. And all of it began with one tiny act you tolerated. Sometimes the person disrespecting you is not even aware of the damage they are causing. They are acting out of habits, wounds, ego, or carelessness. And because you don't address it, they assume everything is fine. They assume their behavior is acceptable. They assume you don't mind. But silence is misinterpreted as agreement. Tolerance is mistaken for approval. And the cycle continues. Disrespect grows when you believe you must earn kindness, when you think you must prove your worthiness to be treated with care. It grows when you fear losing someone more than you fear losing yourself. It grows when you assume that love means enduring pain. But love without respect is nothing more than attachment coated in illusion. Real connection cannot exist in spaces where one person feels small. Your soul knows when you're being mistreated. It tenses, it tightens, it warns you through discomfort, anxiety, heaviness, or quiet sadness. These signals are not overreactions. They are messages. They are reminders that something is off. They are invitations to listen to yourself. The more you ignore these internal whispers, the fainter your intuition becomes, and the more power disrespect gains over you. If you allow disrespect to grow, it becomes normal. That is the most dangerous part. You begin to accept behaviors you once would have rejected. You begin to tolerate treatment you once would have walked away from. You normalize the pain because it feels familiar. You adapt to the mistreatment because you think it's better than being alone. But familiarity is not the same as love, and comfort is not the same as respect. The way someone treats you is a reflection of their heart, but the way you respond is a reflection of your self-worth. You deserve a life where your voice matters, where your presence is valued, where your feelings are not dismissed but honored. You deserve relationships that uplift, not diminish, build, not break, heal, not harm. And that begins the moment you decide that disrespect, no matter how small, has no place in your life. When you refuse to tolerate the first seed of disrespect, you stop the entire garden of pain from ever growing. You reclaim your voice. You reclaim your strength. You reclaim your dignity. Because the truth is simple. Once you recognize your worth, disrespect cannot survive in your presence. Walking away softly is a sign of inner strength, not weakness. It is a quiet power that doesn't need noise, doesn't need applause, and doesn't seek validation. It is the power of a person who has finally chosen themselves over chaos, over disrespect, over suffering, and over the exhausting cycle of trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding them. Walking away softly is not an act of defeat. It is an act of self-respect. It is the gentle closing of a chapter that has wounded you more than it has healed you. It is the calm acceptance that not everyone deserves access to your heart, your kindness, your loyalty, or your presence. People often misunderstand the quiet exit. They believe strength is loud, confrontational, dramatic, a storm that breaks everything open. But true strength is the ability to control your emotions, protect your peace, and remove yourself from places that no longer honor your soul. When you walk away softly, you choose dignity over reaction, clarity over chaos, and healing over proving a point. You understand that your value is not up for debate, and that convincing someone to treat you right is a battle you should never have to fight. This type of leaving is not fueled by anger. It is not driven by revenge. It is not born from bitterness. It is a peaceful decision that comes after you have tried everything, communicating, compromising, explaining, adjusting yourself, only to realize that the situation will not change. You reach a point where you finally understand that you cannot force someone to respect you, to see your worth, or to love you the way you deserve. And instead of pleading for what should already be yours, you choose to release yourself from the struggle. Walking away softly is the moment you choose your mental and emotional well-being over the comfort of familiarity. It's when you stop participating in conversations that drain you. It's when you stop trying to justify your feelings to someone who has never cared enough to listen. It's when you stop showing up for people who only notice your absence. It's when you realize you have poured too much of yourself into a place that gives you so little in return. There is power in recognizing when a story was meant to end long before you accepted it. There is strength in acknowledging that staying has cost you more than leaving ever will. Staying in the wrong place breaks you slowly, quietly, little by little, until all that remains is a shell of the person you used to be. But walking away softly is the beginning of your return to yourself. It is the moment you pick up the pieces of your spirit and decide to rebuild. People may not understand your decision. They may question it, criticize it, or call you cold for leaving without a scene. But the truth is, walking away without anger is one of the highest forms of emotional maturity. You're not running from the situation. You're rising above it. You're not quitting. You're choosing peace. You're not avoiding confrontation. You're refusing to engage in battles that only injure your soul. There is deep strength in silence. It takes courage to not explain every detail of your pain. It takes discipline to protect your energy rather than waste it trying to change the unchangeable. It takes wisdom to know that some closures must happen within yourself and not in front of others. Walking away softly is the moment your spirit whispers, "I deserve better," and you finally listen. Strength is not measured by how long you endure what hurts you. Strength is measured by how boldly you step away from it. It is easy to stay. It is easy to hold on. It is easy to keep trying to fix something broken out of fear, comfort, or attachment. But walking away requires bravery because you are choosing the unknown over the familiar. You are choosing growth over stagnation. You are choosing self-love over self-sacrifice. And when you walk away softly, you leave behind a message, one that echoes louder than any argument could. You cannot mistreat me and still keep me. This message is not spoken out loud, but it is felt. It is understood. It is remembered. Not because you tried to hurt anyone, but because you chose to honor your worth. The strength of a quiet departure is also reflected in its gentleness. You leave without tearing others down. You leave without wishing them harm. You leave without trying to make them feel what you felt. You simply detach because you have already accepted that you cannot heal in the place where you were wounded. You are not leaving to punish anyone. You are leaving to free yourself. And perhaps the most powerful part of walking away softly is what follows. The rediscovery of your own voice, your own dreams, your own value. When you step away from the noise, you reconnect with the parts of yourself that were muted by someone else's disrespect or neglect. You begin to breathe differently. You begin to feel lighter. You begin to remember who you were before the hurt and who you still have the potential to become. The world teaches us to fight for relationships, but sometimes the greatest fight is the one where you walk away, not out of anger, not out of weakness, but out of profound love for your own soul. Leaving softly is choosing to protect your heart without hardening it. It is choosing to let go without losing yourself. It is choosing to close the door with grace, not bitterness. Walking away softly means you trust life to bring you what is meant for you. It means you believe in your ability to rebuild. It means you honor your inner peace enough to walk away from anything that disturbs it. And that, more than anything, is strength. You teach people how to treat you by what you accept. Every relationship, whether personal, romantic, or professional, silently follows this rule. You may not say it out loud. You may not even realize it. But your reactions, your boundaries, and your tolerances speak louder than any words you could give. People watch how you respond. They notice what you let slide, what you confront, what you ignore, and what you endure. And over time, these patterns shape the way they behave toward you. Not because they are always malicious, but because human beings adjust to the level of access and allowance they're given. In the beginning of any relationship, people test the waters. Intentionally or unintentionally, they might interrupt you in conversation, and if you don't gently correct them, they may continue doing it. They might dismiss your feelings once, and if you quietly swallow that hurt, they may assume your feelings are not a priority. They may cancel plans repeatedly, and if you always say, "It's okay," they may start believing your time isn't valuable. What you accept becomes the blueprint they follow. What you allow becomes the standard. People learn you through your silence just as much as through your words. If you let someone speak to you with disrespect, even once, you send a message. If you allow someone to treat you inconsistently, you communicate that consistency isn't required. If you minimize your needs to keep the peace, you show them that your needs can be ignored. And if you always show up for someone who barely shows up for you, you teach them that they can give you the bare minimum and still have full access to your heart. The truth is, boundaries are not just about protecting yourself. They are about educating others on how to love, respect, and interact with you. Without them, people begin to project their own habits, their own expectations, and sometimes their own selfishness onto you. If you don't define what is acceptable, they will define it for you, and their definition will rarely match what your heart truly deserves. You teach people how to treat you not through force, not through shouting, not through demands, but through the standards you hold and the behavior you model. When you hold your head high and refuse to engage in disrespect, you teach people that you value yourself. When you stop explaining your worth and start acting like it, those who are meant to stay will adjust, and those who aren't will fade away, and both outcomes are blessings. But teaching people how to treat you also begins with how you treat yourself. If you speak harshly to yourself, you will tolerate harshness from others. If you neglect your own needs, you will attract people who neglect them too. If you forgive others instantly but never forgive yourself, you create an imbalance where you always carry the weight. And if you constantly accept crumbs, hoping they will someday become a feast, you show others that they never need to offer you more. Self-respect is the silent teacher in every relationship. When you demonstrate that you honor your feelings, your time, and your boundaries, it sets a tone. People sense it. They feel it. They adjust naturally. Those who cannot meet your standards either rise or leave, and both outcomes protect your peace. Think about the moments when someone crossed a line with you. The first time they raised their voice, the first time they lied, the first time they made you feel small. That moment was not just a moment. It was a choice point. Your reaction became the message. If you allowed it, they learned they could repeat it. If you confronted it, you taught them that you have limits. If you walked away, you taught them that you are not afraid to lose people who harm your spirit. Every yes you give when you want to say no teaches people that your boundaries are flexible. Every time you go along with something that makes you uncomfortable, you teach them that your comfort doesn't matter. Every time you remain silent to keep the peace, you teach them that their peace is more important than yours, and what you teach becomes the dynamic of the relationship. You cannot expect people to respect boundaries you never voice. You cannot expect people to meet standards you do not uphold yourself. And you cannot expect people to change if you continue accepting the behaviors that hurt you. Growth begins with refusing to betray yourself. Healing begins with loving yourself enough to walk away from anything that makes you question your worth. Teaching people how to treat you also means understanding that you deserve reciprocity. If you are always giving emotionally, physically, mentally, without receiving support, appreciation, or effort in return, you set a pattern where imbalance becomes normal. And once imbalance feels normal, disrespect is not far behind. When you finally demand equal effort, some people will be shocked. Not because you are asking for too much, but because they have grown comfortable giving too little. Sometimes you will lose people when you raise your standards. Sometimes relationships will shift when you begin choosing yourself. This is not a sign that you're becoming harsh or unreasonable. It's a sign that those relationships were built on your self-sacrifice, not on mutual respect. When you no longer accept what once drained you, you create space for relationships built on value, honesty, and love. You teach people how to treat you through consistency. When you reward bad behavior with another chance, you teach them that apologies are optional and accountability is negotiable. When you leave and return repeatedly, you teach them that your departure is temporary and your forgiveness automatic. But when you enforce your boundaries with calm certainty, you teach them to take your limits seriously. The world will always test you. Some people will step on your boundaries not because they want to hurt you, but because they were never taught boundaries themselves. Others will test you out of carelessness, and some will test you out of selfishness. But no matter their reason, you must be the guardian of your own soul. You must be the protector of your own peace. The way you allow people to speak to you becomes the tone of the relationship. The way you allow people to show up for you becomes the rhythm of the relationship. The way you allow people to value you becomes the foundation of the relationship. And the moment you decide that your soul deserves gentleness, respect, and honesty, your entire world begins to shift. You teach people how to treat you by making one powerful decision. You will no longer accept anything less than what honors your heart. Respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship. It is the quiet force that holds people together, the invisible thread that allows love, friendship, and connection to grow without fear. Respect is not loud, dramatic, or showy. It does not demand attention. It does not scream for validation. It simply exists, steady, constant, and essential. Without respect, every relationship begins to crumble, no matter how much affection, attraction, or history may be present. Respect is the soil in which trust grows, the air that communication breathes, and the shelter where vulnerability feels safe. When respect is present, people feel valued. They feel seen and heard. They feel understood in a way that nourishes the spirit rather than depletes it. Respect allows two people to coexist without trying to control or diminish each other. It creates space for differences, disagreements, and imperfections. It acknowledges that two individuals can walk side by side without needing to stand on each other's shoulders to feel tall. Respect gives room for individuality and connection at the same time. At its core, respect is a recognition of worth. Not only the worth of the other person, but your own. When you respect someone, you treat their feelings with care. You treat their boundaries with seriousness. You treat their time as valuable. You treat their presence as meaningful. You treat their dreams as significant. And you expect these same things in return. Respect is never one-sided. It cannot survive in imbalance. It must flow in both directions to create harmony. In relationships without respect, even the smallest issues turn into battles. Communication feels like walking on eggshells. Every misunderstanding becomes a wound. Without respect, people focus on winning instead of understanding. They focus on being right instead of being compassionate. They begin to speak in ways that cut deeper than they realize. They begin to listen with ears that are closed and hearts that are guarded. Without respect, love becomes suffocating instead of freeing. Respect shows itself in everyday actions. It is in the tone you use when you speak. It is in the patience you show when the other person is struggling. It is in the honesty you give, even when the truth is uncomfortable. It is in the way you prioritize the other person's dignity. It is in the way you apologize when you're wrong and acknowledge when they are hurt. It is in the way you hold space for their emotions, even when you don't fully understand them. When two people respect each other, disagreements are not threats. They are opportunities. They allow each person to learn, to grow, and to understand the other more deeply. Respect transforms arguments into conversations, conflicts into clarity, and tension into a bridge that leads to connection. When respect is present, there is no desire to belittle, humiliate, or dismiss. You may disagree, but you never dishonor. Respect also means trusting someone's intentions. It means believing they care, even when they fall short. It means not assuming the worst. It means being willing to talk before you judge and willing to listen before you defend yourself. It means giving grace without allowing yourself to be mistreated. Respect protects the relationship, not by avoiding difficult conversations, but by approaching them with gentleness. In romantic relationships, respect deepens love. It keeps affection from becoming possession. It keeps closeness from becoming control. When respect stands strong, love has room to breathe. You allow each other to grow individually because you know the relationship is not threatened by personal evolution. You encourage each other's dreams instead of feeling intimidated by them. You celebrate each other's strengths instead of competing with them. Respect allows love to be a partnership instead of a power struggle. In friendships, respect builds longevity. Friends who respect each other do not envy, belittle, or exploit. They do not disappear when life gets tough or show up only when they need something. Respectful friendships feel safe. You can speak your truth without fear of betrayal. You can be vulnerable without fear of judgment. You can be imperfect without fear of abandonment. Respect turns friendship into a sanctuary. In family relationships, respect brings healing. It breaks cycles of generational harm. It allows parents and children to understand each other as human beings. It allows siblings to forgive each other more easily. It brings peace into households where misunderstanding once lived. Respect softens old wounds and prevents new ones from forming. Without respect, families become places where love exists, but pain dominates. In professional relationships, respect creates trust and productivity. When colleagues respect each other, work feels lighter. When supervisors respect their team, people feel motivated instead of controlled. When employees feel respected, they give their best not out of fear, but out of loyalty. Respect turns workplaces into communities rather than battlegrounds. But respect must begin within. If you do not respect yourself, you will accept behavior that hurts you. You will tolerate words that diminish you. You will excuse actions that break you. People learn how to treat you by watching how you treat yourself. If you honor your own boundaries, others are more likely to honor them too. If you speak up when someone crosses the line, people take your limits seriously. If you value your time and energy, you attract those who value them as well. Self-respect is not arrogance. It is not selfishness. It is the recognition that your heart, your peace, and your dreams matter. And when you respect yourself, you automatically create a higher standard for how others treat you. Respecting yourself is the first step toward building relationships that uplift instead of drain. Respect also shows up in how you respond to disagreement. It is easy to be respectful when everything is peaceful. The real test comes when emotions run high. Can you stay calm when you feel triggered? Can you speak gently when you are frustrated? Can you listen even when you disagree? Can you walk away to cool down instead of saying something that causes lasting harm? Respect is not just shown in moments of comfort, it is proven in moments of conflict. There is beauty in relationships where respect is mutual. They feel peaceful, they feel steady, they feel safe. In these relationships, you do not have to perform to be accepted. You do not have to shrink yourself to avoid conflict. You do not have to hide your truth to be loved. Respect allows you to be fully human, flawed, growing, learning, evolving, and still deeply valued. Without respect, even the strongest bond eventually weakens. Words hurt deeper. Trust becomes fragile, communication becomes strained, love becomes a burden. But with respect, even the most difficult moments become survivable, and even the most painful conversations can lead to healing. Respect is the foundation, the quiet strength beneath every healthy connection. It is what turns love into partnership, friendship into loyalty, family into unity, and strangers into allies. It is what makes relationships last through seasons of change, misunderstanding, and growth. And when respect is present, even the simplest moments feel meaningful because you know your heart is safe in the presence of someone who values it. You don't need to fight for a place where you are no longer valued. There is a quiet truth in this statement that many people learn only after their spirit has been stretched too thin. When you are not valued, the signs are always there, subtle at first, then unmistakable. But because the heart wants to hold on, because your memories feel warm and your hopes feel real, you stay longer than you should. You give more than you receive. You keep trying to fix what someone else keeps breaking. And somewhere in that struggle, you forget that places where your worth is questioned will never be the places where your soul can bloom. You don't need to fight for what should be freely given. Love, respect, appreciation, and effort are not gifts you should have to beg for. Healthy relationships don't require you to sacrifice your dignity to feel seen. They don't ask you to shrink yourself just to fit in someone's life. When you find yourself fighting for the bare minimum, attention, kindness, consistency, it's a sign that the space you're fighting for no longer has room for you, or perhaps never did. Trying to force your presence in someone's life is a painful form of self-abandonment. It is choosing to stay in a place where your heart is treated like an inconvenience. It is choosing to explain your worth to people who have no intention of understanding it. It is choosing to hope for change in someone who has already shown you who they are. And every time you fight to be valued by someone who does not value you, a part of your spirit dims. There is a difference between fighting for a relationship and fighting within a relationship that only one person cares about. Fighting for a relationship means both people are working, communicating, and trying. Fighting within a hollow connection means you're carrying the weight alone while the other person barely lifts a finger. When your effort becomes the only force keeping the relationship alive, it stops being love and becomes survival. And you were not born to survive love. You were born to experience it. You don't need to remind people of your worth. The right people recognize it without needing to be convinced. They show up without being asked. They care without needing a reason. They value you because they see the light you bring into their world. But when someone repeatedly treats you like an afterthought, it's not because you're lacking, it's because they were never prepared to handle your depth. People who truly value you don't leave you guessing. They don't make you question your place in their life. They don't give you mixed signals, broken promises, or temporary affection. They don't disappear when things get difficult or ignore you when you need support. They don't keep you in emotional limbo. They make you feel safe, appreciated, and respected. If someone's behavior does the opposite, you don't need to fight harder. You need to walk away. When you fight to stay where you are no longer valued, you lose more than just your time. You lose clarity. You lose peace. You lose pieces of yourself trying to fit into places that were never meant to hold you. You start to question your worth because someone else failed to recognize it. You start to believe you're asking for too much, when in reality, you've been accepting far too little. You deserve a love that does not exhaust you. You deserve friendships that feel like support, not competition. You deserve conversations that don't leave you questioning yourself. You deserve presence, not excuses. You deserve consistency, not temporary affection. And you deserve spaces where your heart is met with care, not indifference. Walking away from a place where you're undervalued is not giving up. It's choosing yourself. It's choosing to no longer water dead plants. It's choosing to no longer chase after people who walk away. It's choosing to give your energy to places where it is appreciated, not exploited. It's choosing to protect your spirit from those who only show up when they need something from you. Sometimes the hardest part is accepting that the person or place you wanted the most is not capable of giving you what you deserve. But acceptance brings clarity. It frees you from the cycle of trying to earn something that should be unconditional. It reminds you that your worth is not determined by how someone else treats you, but by how you choose to treat yourself. When you stop fighting for a place where you are not valued, you open the door to places where you will be. You make room for genuine connections. You make room for people who appreciate your presence. You make room for peace. You make room for joy. And you make room for growth. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared enough about yourself to leave. It means you recognize that love without respect is not love at all. It means you realize that loyalty to the wrong place is still betrayal, betrayal of your own heart. You don't need to fight to be loved. You don't need to prove that you're worthy. You don't need to chase what isn't meant for you. Anything you have to fight too hard to keep was never truly yours to begin with. Real value does not need convincing. Real love does not need begging. Real connection does not need force. The moment you walk away from places that don't value you, you reclaim your power. You teach the world how you deserve to be treated. You show your heart that it is worthy of more. You choose peace over pain, dignity over desperation, and self-love over self-sacrifice. And in doing so, you set yourself free. You don't need to fight for a place where you are no longer valued. You simply need the courage to leave and the wisdom to never return to what hurt you. Choosing yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of remembering your own worth in a world that often tries to make you forget it. There comes a time in everyone's life when the heart grows tired, not of loving, but of being taken for granted, overlooked, or repeatedly placed second in spaces where it deserved to be first. Choosing yourself begins as a whisper inside you. It is soft, gentle, and almost timid. But over time, that whisper grows into a roar, one you can no longer ignore. It is the moment you realize that survival is not enough. You were meant to live, to breathe freely, to love without fear, and to exist without apologizing for being who you are. For too long, you may have bent yourself into shapes just to fit into people's expectations. You may have carried burdens that were never yours, simply because someone else refused to carry their share. You may have silenced your voice to keep the peace, swallowed your feelings to avoid conflict, and dimmed your light so someone else wouldn't feel overshadowed. But choosing yourself means deciding once and for all that you will no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You will no longer abandon yourself to be accepted. You will no longer betray your own heart to keep a seat at a table where you are merely tolerated. Emotional liberation begins the moment you stop needing permission to honor your needs. It begins the moment you stop waiting for others to validate what your spirit already knows. Your feelings matter, your boundaries matter, your happiness matters. You deserve to wake up in a life where you do not feel like a burden. You deserve to be surrounded by people who see your worth without being reminded. You deserve to be loved in a way that does not hurt. But before any of that can happen, you must choose yourself first. When you choose yourself, you reclaim power you once gave away too freely. You stop giving people access to the softest parts of your heart when they have not earned the right to hold them gently. You stop pleading for affection from those who offer only crumbs. You stop explaining your value to people committed to misunderstanding you. Choosing yourself means refusing to let your spirit be handled carelessly. It means protecting your peace as though it were sacred, because it is. There is a kind of strength in walking away from what harms you, not the loud, dramatic kind that demands applause, but the quiet, grounded strength that whispers, "I deserve better than this." It is the strength of someone who has finally realized that they are not obligated to stay where they are not appreciated. It is the strength of someone who understands that self-respect is not negotiable. It is the strength of someone who has learned that peace cannot be found in the same place where their soul was wounded. Choosing yourself also means learning to set boundaries that honor your emotional well-being. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors. Doors that you decide when to open and when to close. They are expressions of self-love. When you choose yourself, you stop being afraid to disappoint others. You stop prioritizing their comfort over your sanity. You begin to understand that the people who truly care about you will never demand that you sacrifice your well-being for their convenience. Emotional liberation is not about escaping the world. It is about escaping the parts of yourself that settled for less. The parts that feared being alone more than being mistreated. The parts that believed love must be earned through suffering. The parts that stayed silent because you believed your voice didn't matter. When you choose yourself, those parts begin to fade. You start to see your own reflection with more compassion, more respect, more tenderness. You begin to rediscover the parts of you that were buried beneath years of pleasing others. You learn that loving yourself does not require permission. It does not require applause. It does not require someone else's understanding. Choosing yourself means realizing that you are allowed to be your own safe space. It means speaking to yourself with kindness, even on the days when you feel unworthy. It means listening to what your body and heart have been trying to tell you for years. Sometimes choosing yourself requires walking away from people you love, not because they are entirely bad, but because they drain the parts of you that you're trying to heal. Sometimes it means letting go of relationships that once felt like home. It means releasing friendships that grew heavy with jealousy, competition, or emotional neglect. It means stepping away from family patterns that suffocate your growth. Choosing yourself can feel like breaking your own heart, but often it is the only way to save your soul. In choosing yourself, you begin to unlearn the belief that love must hurt to be real. You begin to unlearn the idea that your value is determined by how much you give. You begin to unlearn the habit of putting everyone else first while placing your own needs at the end of the line. You begin to unlearn the stories that told you you were not enough. Emotional liberation requires this unlearning. It requires stripping away the layers of doubt that others placed upon you, and then slowly you begin to rebuild. You rediscover your own voice, the one that was quieted by fear. You rediscover your own desires, the ones you buried because you were told they were too much. You rediscover your joy, your curiosity, your strength. You rediscover the version of yourself that existed before the world tried to reshape you. Choosing yourself teaches you that you are allowed to rewrite your life. You are allowed to say no without guilt. You are allowed to say yes to what nourishes your soul. You are allowed to begin again even after years of losing yourself. You are allowed to build a life that feels like freedom instead of survival. Emotional liberation is not a destination, it is a daily practice. It is learning to breathe deeply, to speak truthfully, to love yourself courageously. It is allowing yourself to exist without seeking approval. It is trusting your intuition. It is honoring your boundaries. It is recognizing that your heart deserves the same tenderness you give to others. When you choose yourself, you stop living for the expectations of others. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing. You stop waiting for someone to choose you back. You begin to trust that the right people will meet you with the respect you show yourself. And if they don't, you walk away with grace, not bitterness, because you finally understand that choosing yourself was never an act of abandonment. It was an act of coming home. Leaving gently is an act of quiet courage, one that many people underestimate until the moment they are faced with it. It is the moment you realize that holding on is causing more harm than good, that staying is slowly eroding the parts of you you're trying to protect, and that love, no matter how deep, cannot grow in a place where respect, effort, or care has disappeared. Leaving gently does not mean leaving without emotion or without pain. It means choosing to walk away with grace instead of bitterness, clarity instead of chaos, dignity instead of destruction. It is the kind of departure that honors your heart and your spirit, even if the world doesn't understand it. When you leave gently, you acknowledge the truth without creating unnecessary storms. You recognize that endings do not need to be violent to be valid. So often, people explode their way out of relationships, friendships, and situations because the emotional pressure becomes too much. But there is another way, one that allows you to step back without tearing the world apart. Leaving gently means choosing a path that keeps your soul intact. It is a refusal to let anger write your final chapter. It is the decision to let peace, not resentment, guide your final steps. Healing begins the moment you decide to stop fighting battles that drain your spirit. It begins the moment you choose to prioritize your emotional well-being instead of trying to fix what is no longer meant for you. When you leave gently, you give yourself permission to rest. You give yourself permission to breathe again, to take back your power, and to rebuild the parts of you that were exhausted from trying too hard for too long. Healing does not happen in chaos. Healing requires space